Hello, you're very welcome along to another episode of the Talking Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined once again by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
Weekend review time, Sean. Yeah, how'd you find the weekend of sport? Pretty decent overall.
Yeah, it was obviously the Saturday morning was a bit of a welcome surprise almost because at one stage I just thought Leicester were so poor. It was like how they played at Anfield. There was kind of no real fire to them, and all of a sudden 7 minutes of madness really. The kind of stuff that gets you off the edge of your seat because every time Leicester attacked for that 7 minutes, they looked like they could score once they got the first goal. So kind of started well, and then I suppose ended badly on Sunday with Ireland losing to France in the rugby, and losing probably in the manner they did as well.
It was the first time ever they've lost. Ireland have lost their first two games in Six Nations, so not ideal.
Yeah, and it's going to the Millennium is always a tough ask, but I mean to play France at home, rather than go away is always a plus, isn't it? In a campaign, and I don't know, there's definitely something missing. And it's a long kind of couple of years away now from the World Cup, where the last couple of years, if you think about it, Ireland have never really been focusing 2 years out from a World Cup on a World Cup, but it seems like now it's the only hope, rugby fans and the players probably have now of, there's probably guys there who aren't going to make the World Cup in 2 years, and they kind of have to get the bones of a squad and a settled squad to get there. And, there's it's probably going to have worse results and worse performances than that on Sunday, if they're going to have any way of trying to find a team for the World Cup.
Absolutely. It gets like a long term project, like the likes of they brought in Paul O'Connell, sorry, to come in as a coach, which obviously hasn't had the impact yet. But I think more focus should be on the other management team, like the likes of Andy Farrell, who've had like the guts of a year or so to work with this squad.
Yeah, no, it is. The thing is, like, when you always appoint from within your coaching setup, you kind of do it as it's almost a safe decision. You even see, you look at what Bournemouth did with Jason Tyndall in football, where they appointed Eddie Howe's number two, who'd been at the club for all of Eddie Howe's reign, and it kind of ended badly there. Didn't think they'd won a game in five, before he got sacked. And I always think it's probably just a safe decision because you're looking for continuity, you're looking for more of the same. And to be honest, after Joe Schmidt, Ireland probably needed a bigger rebuild and a bigger project than that. But I suppose, Andy Farrell will be saying, give me a little bit more time, and I'm sure he'll get it. Um, and similar to what Stephen Kenny has had in the men's football side of it, it's not been an easy year with COVID implications and a lot of other things. But you watch that Ireland team, and there's a real lack of energy to it. It looks like you're kind of watching the same side. I know there's different players in, but it's the same similar style of rugby, and there's no real change to it. And it always looks worse when you're losing games and you're not competitive, and especially when there's no fans there, in the stadium that can give that bit of energy when you're watching it. It does feels a bit pedestrian at the moment, and it's just one of them where Jacob Stockdale, burst onto the scene a couple of years ago, and there was real excitement. And similar players have done that, and Andrew Conway, and he's been chopped in and out of the squad. Stockdale was kind of dropped at one stage, and he's injured now, I think. And there is a bit of a worry long term about where it's going to go, and who are the six or seven staple players that Andy Farrell, if given the opportunity, is going to build his World Cup squad around. Because at the end of the day, Ireland have done well in Six Nations, and got to the big stage and not done it. And I think Irish fans would be more than happy to kind of be lackluster in the Six Nations and compete really well at the World Cup. But even if you look at the pooling and what's going to happen if Ireland do get out of the pool, could end up with a quarter final against New Zealand or France. So it's looking now, it's a grim picture at the moment. And the performance again was just kind of lackluster, just a lot of kind of play in midfield. And sometimes when you commit men and try and commit the opposition into rucks, is to create that space out wide. And it just looks like Ireland don't have the players at the moment to get the ball out quickly to the wings, or get the ball out to Gary Ringrose. And it just, at the minute, it's give the ball to Henshaw or Ringrose, and he'll try and beat one, and you look at France's try with the offload and just keeping the ball alive. And when Ireland tried to do that, it was one instance in the first half where Ringrose kept the ball alive, gave off an offload, and I think he get it to Ian Henderson or something, and the ball went to ground and it was a knock on. And it's just probably the sign that Ireland at the moment is just not going well. And even if they try and implement a more aggressive style of rugby in terms of keeping the ball alive and playing more freely in possession, is it necessarily always going to work? And it's probably going to have a lot more teething problems than it has already.
Yeah, so it's the gap week now, so it's Italy away, and then another week break. It just feels like it's kind of petered out already. A lot of Irish interest there, I guess, and like you said, maybe focus a lot more on the World Cup long term going forward, and maybe this time it could work out the other way, I guess, compared to our previous Six Nations result. But moving on to Liverpool, then I guess is probably the best place to start the Premier League. A lot of rumours were circulating there on social media of bust-ups and all that. I saw Jordan Henderson laughed it off earlier today, same with Jurgen Klopp as well. I thought Klopp addressed and his press conference quite well, obviously considering his personal circumstances. But what did you make of the performance? You touched on it there. Like, Leicester were very poor for large periods. I thought Liverpool shaded the first half, should have been ahead, got the goal from Salah in the second half, and then it just all fell apart.
Yeah, I know. I was watching that game for probably 60 minutes, just so disappointed with Leicester. Kind of gone in my head mulling over, is this kind of always going to be Brendan Rodgers' Achilles heel? I know he beat Manchester City at the start of the season, but City were kind of in free for all. They overcommitted at so many opportunities, and when Liverpool kind of sat in, it was as if Leicester didn't have an answer to it, and I think they tried to go overly direct to Vardy, and it kind of worked in the first half with a couple of opportunities. And when you have someone like Jamie Vardy, he's going to get opportunities. But for large parts, I thought Liverpool were more more secure than they have been recently. Probably again lacking something going forward. The wing backs just again their final ball isn't working, and when it is working, there's not enough bodies in the box. There's always going to be this thing hanging over Thiago. It's a really weird situation for Liverpool to be in. I can't remember a player who's come in and has looked or has contributed and just has not got results at his club despite being a world-class midfielder. Like, Thiago is as good a central midfielder as you can get in the world. He was unbelievable in the Champions League for Bayern under Hansi Flick, but at the moment it's just maybe he's going to take time to get used to the Premier League, which I think would be a fair. But when he's come on in games, and he came on the Newcastle game, and he looked like he was up for the battle, and looked like he could really, the Newcastle away game, looked like he could adapt to the Premier League. And this was one of his first games kind of coming back from injury. And Liverpool fans are excited. And at the moment, they just haven't got that midfield right with him in the side. And large part of it has to be put at Fabinho and Henderson playing in the back line. I can understand that with Thiago, but their midfield is all over the place. I think Curtis Jones is a really good player, but I'm not sure if you can have Wijnaldum and Thiago together as a kind of a deep line midfield two at the moment.
I saw Arsene Wenger had made the point that obviously Van Dijk's injury was a massive blow for Liverpool. That's stating the obvious, but he did mention that they're missing that high press from midfield, and they're missing Henderson from that midfield. He singled out that from last season. You were kind of saying maybe 2 weeks ago they're not quite missing him as much as a lot of people are saying. Would you still kind of have that view? I know it's one of those situations where there is no one right thing. It's a combination of a lot of things. I do think, though, they are missing a Henderson in the middle to kind of lead a press. But then if you are playing with Thiago there, it's kind of hard to do that style of play as well. So it's a bit of to and fro there, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is a weird one. I personally think Fabinho in that position probably gives them a lot more security. And I think where they are more or less going wrong is they're getting exposed at the back far too easily. And that can come from the press, but also I think comes from their central midfield. And I'm not sure with Gini Wijnaldum at the moment. Every time I watch him, I think, this guy's a great player. But, he's one of them, I suppose, when the team's not playing well, he probably goes from a 7 or 8 out of 10 to probably a 6 out of 10. And there's probably a couple of players at Liverpool like that at the minute where, that they're good players when the team's going well, they're a huge part of the jigsaw. But at the moment, the goal that happened, Thiago's positioning for it would have been the third goal, Barnes's goal, is all over the place. he's in a complete. The ball kind of gets played, and he's almost in a right back position, and he hasn't filtered in across, and there's no one covering the midfield, and I think it's Ndidi has time on the ball, and he just plays a ball into the path of Harvey Barnes, and Barnes had a chance earlier. And it was just so unlike Liverpool. They were so all over the place for 20 minutes or for 10 minutes even, and it cost them.
Because when it's not going your way, you know, it leads to goals. You know, I'd say last season they could have played like that, got the 1-0 lead, and would have maybe dug out the 1-0. It just kind of, it almost feels like when things not going their way, the mistakes lead to goals instead of missed chances, 1% here or there. It just seems the case. Like, and once one thing goes wrong and you're in bad form, I guess it's tough to kind of stop that momentum. Like,
no, absolutely, and even at the start of the season, and you've probably been saying about Liverpool for a while, they've always won games when they've not been at it. Jota dug them out of a hole a couple of times. I think the West Ham game at the start of the season, Sheffield United scored first, I think, with a penalty, and they kind of grounded out a win at Anfield near the start of the season. But there definitely is just, it's not going well, and things aren't clicking. And when they scored the first goal, they didn't even kind of change how they played, if you like. They were still a little bit kind of erratic. Again, Trent Alexander-Arnold has a huge problem in a 1v1 with the free kick, or it was given a penalty, ended up a free kick with Thiago trying to come in with a foul, and then the goalkeeper makes a major blunder. I don't think he should ever come out for a diagonal ball like that.
Just to sit, like, in the first half, I don't know if you saw, there were one or two where there was no one near him and he was, 10 yards off his penalty area. You almost felt like, and he might have headed the ball away clear, where it almost felt like, and as a goalkeeper myself, being there, where you're kind of like, okay, all eyes are on me because I've no confidence here. I'm going to show I have confidence, and you almost then end up being overconfident. And it just felt from the first minute he was heading balls away 25 yards out, where he should have taken a step back, let it come into his box. And I think that ultimately led to that second goal.
Yeah, I think there's a big issue for that, because I think sweeper keepers work for kind of straight balls down the channel, but when a ball's coming across the pitch and it's a diagonal, I don't think he has any business there. It's not a goal scoring opportunity until he comes out of his goal, and then there's a big mix up with the new centre half, Kabak. He'll probably get a bit of blame, but I didn't think at one stage he didn't have it under control. And then the keeper looked at, again, that kind of stuff, when your luck's not in, it's not in. And how often has he dug them out of holes? And then the easiest of finishes for Vardy. But I'd be more disappointed with Klopp, and I think he was, with the manner of the third goal from Barnes, and actually the chance Barnes had before that, and the double save from Alisson. I'd be more worried about those. And those goals necessarily probably don't happen if you have a Fabinho, or even like an Ndidi type player that's screening across that back four. And when they did overcommit, they were just caught out. And yeah, I'd say Klopp, and he did, I think, say it in his press conference that he's more disappointed with the manner of the third goal than he was the second goal. But at the end of the day, I was after the game, you were looking at the league table. I think Everton had 3 games in hand, but prior to that, lost to Fulham. And I was looking at going, geez, when was the last time Everton finished above Liverpool? And then the Barclays Premier League came and did its bit on Sunday night. But
Can't beat the Barclays now, in fairness.
No, Liverpool. I from what I saw, Leipzig against Manchester United in the first game at Old Trafford, if Leipzig are anyway near as open as they have been, as they were that game, I think it honestly could be 4-4, that the Liverpool Leipzig game, and one of the games, because they were just so open. Not sure if you remember when United were 2-0 up or something. They just kept putting bodies on, and Cavani, Rashford got a hat-trick, and I think Cavani could have had 4 or 5 himself.
And Bruno was handing off penalties to Rashford like nobody's business. Yeah,
coming off the bench, Cavani could have scored 3 or 4. So I think if Leipzig play anywhere like they did that night, it could be goals.
And it definitely, with Liverpool, a bit of a refresh to the Champions League, different mindset. Ali McCoy's respected enough, former player, wants Keller in ahead of Alisson for next game. That's definitely way off the cards, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I've seen all that stuff. I think you're better off Alisson staying in there, aren't you? Because I think even if he has a semi-good game, just brings the confidence back. And, you know, it's not an easy position for Kelleher to come in, because it's always one where it's like Olsen when he kind of came in this year for Everton with Pickford. You're kind of coming in knowing that your opposite player, the person you train with, isn't doing well, and you're supposedly worse than him, and you have to come in and do well. So I think it's a really difficult scenario. So I presume Klopp will continue with Alisson. And I think football in general these days has such a short memory, because he has been, you know, world class and
best in the
without
world,
doubt.
because I definitely think Ederson was there, but I definitely thought last year, start of this season, Alisson was pretty much unflappable throughout. But
And you wouldn't necessarily, like, he's made a couple of massive saves. I think the year they won the Champions League, he saved the one in the 90th minute against Napoli down at the away end at Liverpool, and that was a massive moment. This is why they signed him. But he doesn't necessarily make ridiculously amazing saves, but he makes really good saves at crucial times in games where, you know, another keeper might just get a hand to it and parry it to someone. Where Alisson, you know, he's he's not spectacular in some of his saves, but he is an incredible keeper. And probably like that, De Gea makes some world class saves at times, but he also at the minute is having far too many blunders.
Absolutely. Quick word on Tottenham and Jose. You kind of spell the end of this Tottenham team. Is it more the end of this Tottenham team or the end of Jose, or a bit of both? Because you know, for Tottenham fans looking at that, it was a Manchester City away. They were never going to get a point. But what kind of worried you about the performance more than losing 3-0 away to the champions elect?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit, when you think of all the stuff that's happened in the last while with Dele Alli and, you know, Gareth Bale, and there's a lot of talk now about Harry Kane and Eriksen's moved on, and Vertonghen's moved on, and people like Danny Rose. And I saw the performance of Lloris, and I saw the performance of him the other day, and he's just making, just his confidence. He looks his confidence to be shot. I don't know. He's captain of the team. I don't know if that's an eternal thing with Mourinho, if there's problems as to why he's not playing well. But I just think that Tottenham team, that were probably one of the best Tottenham teams of all time, didn't win anything, although they had the opportunity to win the Carabao Cup. I think that Pochettino team is probably coming to the end, where they really need to blood in players. Eric Dyer, I think, is now 27. He's had a really good career so far for Tottenham and for his club, or for his country. I think he's 40 odd caps for England.
40, is
but
he?
it's gonna, yeah, I think so. And it's just gonna have to move on a little bit. And you look at those players, and you look at Harry Kane now, at the age he is, with the injury history he has, with 3 more years left on his contract. I mean, is anyone going to sign him? Harry Kane, is anyone going to be able to afford him? So I definitely think Kane, Dele Alli, Eric Dyer, Eriksen, all the Villarreal still there. Eriksen and Vertonghen have moved on, players like that. And Tottenham probably need a kind of a manager with more coaching in them to find a system that suits these players. Rather, I don't think those players can get any better in terms of their system, but I think, in terms of their kind of individual attributes, but I think they need to be coached in a system better. And at the moment, I think that's where Jose's gone wrong, because when they defend in a compact shape, I think they're pretty good. But when they start leaving gaps, I mean, I don't think Ben Davies is a good defender anymore. Maybe his confidence is gone. Sanchez looks poor. Their right back is a huge issue. It's probably a classic Jose Mourinho, where he doesn't trust any of them, or he doesn't want to trust any of the right backs. Especially when a team signs a player, or when the club signs a player to play right back. And I think that's, Daniel Levy, when Tottenham signed a lot of those players, they probably signed them knowing that they're going to have to be playable for the next manager, because Mourinho is not a long-term thing. And he probably came in at the wrong time for Tottenham, where Tottenham had this brilliant football. They've been in tremendous situation where he probably needed to take over a team like an Everton, or a team like a Newcastle, where the expectation is low. They haven't played well, and they kind of want a brilliant manager to get behind. And Tottenham are probably at that stage where Kane, Son, all these guys are looking around going, how many more years are we not going to, compete again or win the big honours, and you have to fancy Manchester City in the League Cup final. But I definitely think I wouldn't be surprised to see a new manager come in the summer for Tottenham, and I think it'd probably be the best for them if they could get a Nagelsmann at Leipzig, or they can get one of these kind of new up and coming managers like they got in Pochettino. They took a chance on Pochettino when he was at Southampton, and I think if they could probably do something like that, because at the moment the Jose experiment, even though it worked at the start of the season, you were still looking at this. Jose tried to bring in a few players, your Højbjergs, your Regular on the left back, and even now a lot of that has kind of petered out. But they're in a massive moment here, Tottenham, where I think it's probably similar to Arsenal, where they're still considered a top six club, but they're very much at the bottom of the top six ladder. And Arsenal are down there, and Leicester are coming at them, and you can very easily drop. And Everton are playing well under Carlo Ancelotti, and the more it goes on, the more Tottenham and Arsenal drop down that top six ladder. And as soon as Tottenham drop out of that top six ladder, well, they lose Harry Kane, or they could lose Son, and they haven't got the attraction of Champions League football. And yeah, I think they're at a big junction. You've got players there like Lamela and Lucas Moura, and I don't really know what they do. And Lamela tried to play almost in a 10 at times. Every time he got the ball, he got one, and I remember I don't know who was it Gary Neville on commentary said, "I'll just play in Son," and they just didn't get he didn't have the ability, whether he didn't have the confidence to do it. And Son was kind of one-on-one with Cancelo, and he kind of made a run in behind, or just even give him the ball, and he didn't really. And I don't know. I definitely think Tottenham are probably at a stage where they probably need to consider how it's going with Jose Mourinho, how far he can take them, and what's going to happen to Kane and Son. Because if they lose one of them two, they'll probably lose both of them if they lose one. But they lose everything that they have at the moment.
Manchester United, quick word on them. Bit of a shock now, to be honest with you. I didn't see that result coming whatsoever. I thought it was considering United's away record, considering West Brom's home record. The more you talk about the United, I think the more you confused you get. I'm almost fed up. Just when they start doing well, they kind of drop off a bit. It was more or less a pretty disappointing performance. How did you?
Yeah,
I guess the early goal didn't help them, but
no, yeah, I missed the first few minutes of the game, and
you weren't the only one. I was the same, and I was shocked when I saw the score.
Yeah, I checked the team and before it, and I saw Fred and McTominay, and I went, "Oh, that's a weird one." And then I went, "Oh, Pogba's not playing," and I thought Pogba, looking back at that, a lot of that game, Pogba was a huge miss for them. It's been that kind of player who's dragged them out of games at times this year. But I definitely think Manchester United, when they don't have Pogba and they play McTominay and Fred in central midfield, I don't think they control games well enough. The West Brom were so easy at times to just get out from their kind of their kind of defensive side or system, if you like, and they could get out, and how many attacks they got through. And Fred and McTominay at the minute, I don't think they have enough football in there, and I don't think one of them is good enough to play in there on his own and to have what United should be looking to do is kind of try and get a Wilfred Ndidi or a Yori Tielemans or both. Because if you have Ndidi in there, it just enables to have a Donny van de Beek playing in there, someone who is good enough to play in there on his own. And it's not an easy, buy at the minute, those kind of players.
So what you're saying, if Van de Beek was to start centre mid, you don't think Fred or McTominay alongside him is good enough to have Van de Beek in there? Okay. Because a lot of United fans want Van de Beek in that number 8 role.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why Ollie hasn't played him, because I think, Matic is probably someone who could, but he probably hasn't got the legs anymore. Or even someone like a Declan Rice would do brilliantly for Manchester United. Massive interest in him. That kind of Michael Carrick kind of player in there on his own who can just link the play and get the move. And I think that's, at the moment, that's probably their biggest weakness. That and the form of Rashford and Martial, in terms of they're not hitting the heights they should do when they have a player like Bruno Fernandes providing chances for them, even half chances. I think Rashford is probably in a major position a major moment where you know, if you look at him, Sterling, Rashford, Grealish, Foden, all guys who can kind of play in off the wing. Only one of them is probably gonna, or only two of them can start for England really, unless Grealish plays as a 10 or whatever. And you know, Rashford at 23 has so many caps for England. He's been a huge part of everything they've done, but he's not playing his best stuff at the moment, so he can't kind of get dragged into a battle for that. And I think he's a quality player, but long term, I think, is he going to be the answer to Manchester United centre forward problems? Probably not. Could he be developed into one? I'm sure he could. But definitely at the moment, Manchester United are kind of, I think they've found their level in terms of they're definitely top four. They've got the players to be top four. Defensively, they have a huge problem with centre back.
Yeah, Maguire is a big bone of contention with a lot of speaking to a few United fans. You know, you kind of, can you get someone alongside a fast lad, basically like Bailly, or is Maguire just too slow for a Manchester United type defence when they really want to dominate games like West Brom away? He could get done on the counter attack, and just because you've someone really fast beside you, I know Lindelof played, so they didn't. But say, for example, Bailly was playing on Sunday. Maguire's still going to be left in those one-on-one situations where he's just not fast enough, and he's so many good attributes as a centre back. There's a reason United paid 80 million for him. But is his lack of pace ultimately going to cost United if they do want to challenge, a properly challenge for a title in a normal season? You know.
Yeah, I actually thought he'd one of his best games in possession. He made a lot of really good runs. He was playing quite high up the pitch, trying to galvanise his side. But it is one of them where I definitely think he's a good enough defender. But they need to find a partnership. And then when they do find a partnership of a Maguire, I don't think Tyrone Mings is the answer, but you know, a Maguire and, like you said, someone a little bit quicker. So if Maguire or Boy, probably need to have an extra level of a goalkeeper in there really, because they're still going to concede chances, and they kind of need that Alisson kind of Neuer, Courtois, or not Courtois recently, but all black level of a goalkeeper who just makes no mistakes. And De Gea's made a few mistakes when United have been caught short at the back. But it's a weird one, Maguire, because I think he is a good defender, but I don't think he uses his presence well enough. I don't think he's that nasty centre back that United kind of need. I don't think he's commanding enough of his size, of his presence. I think he gets bullied a lot.
Is there a case for dropping him?
No,
I don't think so. Either.
No, he if you actually look at how many games he's played in all competitions, he rarely misses a game. I was just going to.
When was the last time? And in fairness to him, for a lot of United's good performances, he's been a constant there as well. And I think overall he is a very good captain for United, which is probably a few reasons why he's still in the team, I guess.
Yeah, I think he just probably, they need to find a way of getting him to use his presence, his size. If you look at Van Dijk, he's commanding. There's all this talk, with Van Dijk or Troy Deeney and saying, oh, he even smells good, or you play against Virgil van Dijk and you want to mark the other centre back. And I think people probably look at Harry Maguire and your man Dean, who started for West Brom, probably thought, yeah, I'm gonna have a crack at both of these. I'm not too afraid of them. And unless Maguire changes, that makes it harder for players to play against him. He definitely needs a centre back partner, but how many quick centre backs are for on the market? Again, it's probably something that a lot of teams want. A lot of teams need a good centre half, but Manchester United certainly have the financial power to find one. It's one of them. I think at the back to the centre halves, essentially, if you can find a good partnership, I mean, it can make two defenders look really good. You look at Gary Cahill now. I know he's a lot older for Crystal Palace, but at times this season when I've watched him, I've gone, how is this lad won Premier Leagues for Chelsea? How is he? But he played alongside John Terry and he was really good, and then he kind of got better from that. And I think if Maguire can find someone, or they can get a partnership going, even with a left footer and a right footer with Maguire, it could possibly work, and they could be looking here. I don't think Maguire's Manchester United's big problem. I definitely think they're probably a centre back short in terms of you can't trust Boy's fitness. I think Lindelof can have good games, and then you think he's turned a corner, and I think he's a little bit like Fred in that, where they're good, but I don't think
will they ever be good enough?
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna. Manchester United want to win the league, in the next couple of years. I don't think they can win the league with Fred, McTominay, and Lindelof
Do
with Maguire at
you
the
not think
moment.
with McTominay's
Well,
potentially?
I just think as a partnership. I mean,
Oh,
you're not
with
going to
Fred.
win with two centre defensive mids for the majority of games in the season, and that's where Pogba. You know, if United lose Pogba now in the summer, I think it could set them back, because Pogba. That's the kind of game Pogba this year has dug them out of, where he's got a goal or he's added that little bit of flair in midfield. But United had spent lots of money, and at times you wonder where it's all gone. And you look at someone like Dan James, who's probably not going to have a long term future at Manchester United. Look at Van de Beek and think, is he ever going to be a regular starter for Manchester United with Pogba, with Fernandes, at the moment? So I think their recruitment's been good recently, Man United, in the last probably 2 or 3 windows, with Maguire, with Wan-Bissaka, with Fernandes. But I definitely think
Cavani as well.
Cavani. I definitely think they need to get that centre back position right, and maybe they need to make a decision on the goalkeeper as well.
That's just about it. I think just before we go, Sean, because we've Connor Daly, Fulham fan, coming on the podcast, Premier League prediction, so I'm sure he'll be tuned in here. They were very good against Everton.
Yeah,
Potential
brilliant.
shout of staying up, because you and I think a lot of people were agreeing, which in fairness, like there was a kind of tone to Scott Parker's interviews recently. I think I heard him interviewed, was it the Chelsea game, and he's like, yeah, it doesn't, this game isn't what we're targeting, and it's obviously they target Everton away, which is a bit harsh on Everton, but there you go, and it worked. And you can definitely make the case. I think their next 3 games, match of day 2, were pretty decent. I think Burnley, Sheffield United, they're those sort of teams.
Yeah, I like Scott Parker, because he's learning on the job all the time. He's learning about his side.
Just a point on him, I do think he can learn a lot. I think he would listen a lot more than a Frank Lampard. I know it's a tough comparison, but I do feel Scott Parker would take on something on board if he got
He's
advice.
probably more of a coach.
Yeah, exactly, as well, and that as well. Yeah,
I think I just go back to that game. It was against Wolves, where they'd come off the back of, people in the media saying they could get relegated, or they're certain to get relegated, and they lost that game, or they conceded late. But there was about 7 or 8 Fulham bodies in the box throwing their bodies at it, and you could tell they were taking on what Scott Parker said, and they've been a joy to watch, Fulham, and I think they've kind of been underrated. You don't watch Fulham ever really and say they've had a bad. They don't play a good style of football. They've competed against the likes of Chelsea, against Liverpool at home, West Ham a few weeks ago. They, again, probably just lacking a little bit of quality, but they've been very good this season to watch, and a big addition to the league, and good quality. And they're probably unlucky that they've been caught adrift in the last few weeks, haven't they? And fixtures can make it look like that when you play tough teams, and Fulham had a really tough run there around the start of the year. But no, they've been really good at times this season, Fulham, and I like Scott Parker. I think he will go on to have a really good coaching career, and I hope Fulham stick with him if they do go down, because Fulham have a huge tendency of hiring and firing managers, and getting guys in from other countries to come in and manage, and it necessarily hasn't worked. Claudio Ranieri was there.
You forget about that, don't you? Jesus.
Yeah, your man Jokanovic, who got them promoted and then got sacked. So the Khan family have they're the key players in Fulham, and they've kind of been but they've had a good January. Don't forget, Maja is a really good signing for
Brilliant
them.
signing. I think most people know him from the Netflix documentary,
Sunderland, yeah.
myself included. Yeah, but yeah, that's brilliant signing. Couldn't believe that kind of came in. Not couldn't believe that was the same player, and then obviously he got the 2 goals, which was brilliant for him.
Fulham. If you actually look at their squad, they have a really good squad. They wouldn't keep that all together for the championship next year if they do go down. But yeah, I like Scott Parker, and I think he's done really well with that Fulham side. And I think there is some really good teams in the Premier League now to watch. Even going back 5 years ago, and the promoted sides probably off the back of Wolves. And I know Wolves are probably a little bit different, in terms of the money they had and the players they had, even in the championship. Your Jotas, your Ruben Neves's, but the expectations on teams coming up now is so high, And this year, 2 of them are likely to go down, and Leeds are going to stay up in brilliant form. But over the last number of years, you've seen Huddersfield survive a year in the Premier League. Sheffield United had a year in the Premier League. Bournemouth for 5 years before Wolves. So I think the Championship is kind of bridging that gap slowly. And this year is probably one of the poorer years in the Championship. And that's why it's quite competitive at the top. There's no real standout teams. So it'll be interesting to see who comes up this year from the Championship as well.
Absolutely. So that's it for the review. We've got the announcement soon on Cheltenham previews coming up. I think it's 30 days, 29 days to Cheltenham, Sean. So we'll be ready there. We'll get a couple of previews on that. It all kicks off on Tuesday. And I just saw that ITV/Virgin Media in the Ireland will get 6 races instead of the first 5. So that'll be good, especially because obviously no fans this year there. So look forward to that.
Yeah, this time next month, and then Augusta's 2 months away. So before you know, we're into the summer with hopefully the Euros and the Olympics and stuff all going well. So it's definitely a busy couple of months leading up into the summer anyway.
Absolutely, and let's hope we get some sort of crowds into some sort of sporting events. I think the Super Bowl kind of showed us what we're missing. Obviously a lot looser over there in America, but it was great to hear crowd noises or proper.
A lot looser in Florida anyway.
Yeah, well, Florida, I think they said that the weekend and all his dancers had masks was the most anyone ever wore masks in Florida. But look, we'll leave it at that. At Tackling Sports, so on social media you can get us. And if you are listening or watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. I have actually meant to check if I'm pointing in the right direction, but you should get that button on the bottom right. And all that's left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from myself. We'll see you for Premier League predictions. Should be out Thursday morning. Thank you.